and Prime Minister Putin advocated the creation of a global central bank. So all of these people are talking about these things, and as in the Club of Rome in the early 70s, as Gorbachev foretold in 1987, the end of the Cold War, coming democracy in the Soviet Union, David Ben-Gurion already in 1960, the Prime Minister of Israel, in January of 1962, spoke of these changes that will take place after the end of the Cold War. He said that America will by then have become a welfare state with a planned economy. In one word, that's a euphemistic phrase just to describe socialism. Is the United States now becoming socialist? It certainly looks that way with the policies being instituted by President Obama.
What a surprise, no one's talking about this. The FCC is being inundated by special interest group ironically named Free Press, whose goal it is to limit America's free press and freedom of speech. This special interest group also claims that it's due to special interest groups that it has become necessary for them to intervene on our behalf. Oh, how great. Free Press is pushing their agenda in the name of net neutrality. Supposedly, they are protecting net neutrality and free speech on the internet and in other media. Yet, who's complaining about the neutrality on the internet? I mean, is there some major outcry that I just haven't heard about yet? Americans have never had more access to more outlets to express themselves than they do right now. Anyone in America with a computer and an internet connection can sit in their basement in their underpants eating biscuits while they bang on their keyboards all night and day while mom's upstairs sleeping. They're like, "Can you tell me, go get a job?" They can literally say whatever they want anytime they want. So what is the problem? Seems to me there isn't one if free speech really is your goal. I mean, really, what's connecting us unlike any other time? The internet. But you see, free press isn't about free speech. It's about Marxism. It's about silencing dissent. Free press is an oxymoron started by an oxy-Marxist. His name is Robert McChesney. In addition to co-founding Free Press, he's also the former editor of the Monthly Review. This is a self-proclaimed independent socialist magazine, I don't want to call names, an openly Marxist publication. Sounds like Free Press advocates so far, doesn't it? Oh, the Klan, there you go again, throwing out wild accusations. The puppet thing that I got at Disney World's not really working, is it? It's really not a smear when you use people's own words. McChesney, in his own words, any serious effort to reform the media system would have to necessarily be part of a revolutionary program to overthrow the capitalist system itself. Also, there is no real answer but to remove brick by brick the capitalist system itself, rebuilding the entire society on socialist principles. I don't mean to sound hateful by pointing out his own words. Is it a smear campaign now to, quote, directly quote these wonderful lovers of our American way of life? Again, here's Free Press co-founder Robert McChesney in his own words, quote, "We need to do whatever we can to limit capitalist propaganda, regulate it, minimize it, and perhaps even eliminate it." Now, granted, McChesney has said these hateful things all the way back in August of 2009. Do you even remember how old you were in August of 2009? It's hard to believe that we even had, recording devices back that far. The above-mentioned quotes on capitalism came from Robert even further back, way back in the time tunnel of February 2009. Weren't the dinosaurs walking around then? I'm not sure about the dinosaurs, but I do think the Crusades were just winding down and the Black Plague had just started kicking back in. But that's what this so-called net neutrality effort is really all about. Your kids have heard about it, I can guarantee. It's about eliminating traditional constitutional points of view from the public arena. But that's not the way it's being built. It is about stopping debate, but nobody will tell you that. It's about ending free speech. It is about Marxism. No, our kids aren't taught that. That's not the way they're positioning it. Next, a sampling of FCC comments from concerned citizens on net neutrality. Remember I showed you a minute ago? I showed you, here's the president, and here's his advisors, and look, they all have something in common. A boycott of the poster child. Wait until you see the comments that are rolling in now to the FCC about net neutrality. I wonder who they might be targeting yet again.
And that's not just my opinion. I was watching on Russia Today last September an interview with Mikhail Gorbachev. And Gorbachev stated that under President Obama, that the United States is now undergoing its own perestroika, its own restructuring. David Ben-Gurion foretold this in 1962 in that interview. Then he said, Europe will become a federated state, democratic and socialist in character. Not socialist like the Soviet Union, collectivism, but the kind of socialism that you had under National Socialism in Germany, but without all the racial Germanic propaganda of the Nazi movement. We now are under a very undemocratic, one might say, bureaucratic dictatorship, like the Directorate dictatorship of the French Revolution, imposed on all of the member states of the European Union from Brussels, the fulfillment of what was foretold by David Ben-Gurion. Gorbachev called the European Union the new European Soviet. And it is described very well by Christopher Story in his book, The European Union Collective, Enemy of its Member States. And with the institution of taxation, the kind of taxation that was recommended at the Copenhagen Conference supposedly for climate change, but where they announced the need for global governance.
We know historically that the global governance the sort of agenda to these issues is very hard to try and, with all the best intentions, it's very hard to actually activate. We're seeing that right now. We're seeing a lot of fragmentation going on in Copenhagen, a lot of different agendas pulling in different directions. And I think what we really need to see is people on the ground starting to actually act upon the low-hanging fruit and start to try and move on the solutions that we have at hand.
And the conference was really concerned with setting up the institutional framework for global governance, which is to say for world government. And climate change is only an excuse to make this appear necessary. And they say that the ultimate remedy is not carbon taxation and reducing carbon footprints, but drastic reduction of population.